the stand. Now he runs. He produces a magic print. He pulls out another one. This is incredible. This is ridiculous. This is 15 out of 10 on the incredible meter. What a player. What an entertainer. Give him the medal. Give him the Dally M.
Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast. Today, we're just going to get our first bit of SuperCoach content fully out of the way, and we're going to do that by doing a team reveal. So we're just going to be running through my team sort of top to bottom, and exciting stuff. If you're just listening as an audio perspective, this is being recorded. We have the video footage and we have a face cam sort of deal going on here. So if you want to see the video format of this podcast, head over to the YouTube channel. Same deal there, Chip and Chase podcast. Go give that a check out. If not, you can still sort of follow along from an audio perspective. I'll just read through, give my thoughts about everything. But yeah, if you're a bit more of a visual learner, definitely come give the YouTube video a bit of a view. So let's just sort of get into it, shall we? As you can see here for you people watching along on YouTube, this is the team here. We're going to start just from the hookers and work our way down to the big stuff, to the fullbacks. But run-on hooker for myself at the moment is Brandon Smith from the Roosters. Of course, a player that will be, you know, taking part in these Vegas games in a couple of days. Now, you know, there's a lot of sort of options in this hooker range, a lot of your guns, or at least your more expensive players. I think there's only one, let's be honest, certified gun, and that is Harry Grant. I wouldn't begrudge a single person for picking him, but I think hooker is a really tough spot this year. I think with his price point, it just makes it really, really hard to sort of reach him and still make the rest of your team work. And the Storm have a really difficult draw to start, so I don't mind going against him. In saying that, there's, you know, a lot of other options, especially, you know, Apisai Coruscant, now that we know that he's sort of goal kicking for the Tigers. Of course, he has that round one bye, which makes him a little bit, you know, difficult, but it also makes him sort of a pot option because not everybody will want to go for him. I have entertained Appy a fair bit, but just with the way my team's structured, I couldn't really sort of sort it out. And Brandon Smith, I've been high on pretty early on, and then he came out and he had that performance in the All-Stars clash, and from then on, I'm like, look, I think second year at the Roosters, combo's building. I'm very big on the Roosters forward pack this year, and I think, you know, Brandon Smith running off that is just going to be phenomenal. So I've locked him in at the moment. They've got Sandon Smith on the bench as well for the Vegas game. Connor Watson not making the squad. I think that bodes a little bit better for Brandon. I'd say Connor Watson taking more minutes off Brandon Smith. So I don't know. I think, yeah, as I said, second year for the Roosters, I think he can really bump his average up. He's only priced at $471K at the moment. So is a bit of a sort of mid-range option. Yeah, definitely a step down from your top priced hookers, and definitely a few steps down from Harry Grant. But it's a sort of a position that I was really set on doing the dual cheapies early, and, you know, that's, you know, still a possibility. I could get cold feet the day before this Vegas game and switch him to someone like Danny Levi, who's an option at hooker. We're pretty sure Jaden Brayley isn't going to be fit for the round one game. And even if he is, it seems as though he's going to be playing pretty reduced minutes, at least to start the season, just to warm into the season. So Phoenix Crossland might be getting the majority of the minute share there at the Knights. So worked my way up to Brandon Smith, who I am very high on. I love the look of him this year. Second year for the Roosters. I think he's in for big things, and he's not at an awful price. So I'm sort of pretty set on Brandon Smith for now, especially, you know, I've only got a couple of days till those Vegas games where he locks out. So that is my run on hooker for my team at the moment. Of course, off the bench for hooker, we're running with Brendan Hands. Could be Darcy Lussick, not Joey Lussick. It could be Darcy Lussick if he does get that spot. Of course, that's interchangeable. We'll have to find that out. When these Vegas players lock, we're pretty sure that the rest of the squad will still be available to change. So if it is Lussick who gets that spot, it's a pretty easy swap there. But Brendan Hands is my pick to get it. I just really like the look of him in the trials. I think he has such a big work rate. a tackling machine, and there was a few moments that I just noticed in those trials that I was just really impressed with him. He wasn't afraid to put in a long kick, and his kicking game was pretty on song. And he chose his darts from dummy half well, not really known as a running hooker, but I think he'll chime in a bit there, especially with the pressure of Lussick or whoever wins this spot, the pressure of the other player. I think they're going to be in for big years. And he's someone that, as you can see here, I've got the reserve on him. Someone I'm not going to be afraid to play, at least in the early rounds, to sort of see how it is. And I reckon it should be a safe 50 every sort of week, at least in the early rounds, which is sort of what we want. Just want those solid points that we can just lock into our team every week. So Brendan Hand's currently my second hooker. That won't change unless, he misses selection and Lussick is picked. So we'll move on to the front rowers, where, I won't lie, I did change my team about 5 minutes before recording this. I got cold feet. The structure of my team wasn't as strong across the board as I would have liked, and that's where we've made some changes here. I've had Jason Taumalolo in my front row majority of the preseason. I just think he's in for a big year, and let's tell it how it is. I was quite disappointed with how he played in the trials, and I did swap him out to Tavita Totola for a bit there, who, if you guys follow the Instagram, you will know I've been pretty high on from a SuperCoach perspective. I think he's in for a big year for the Rabbitohs. I think his minute span it has to go up. And I just think that with Burgess sort of regressing in his role, he's only there for one more year. David Mawali's still young. I assume his minutes will increase, but I can't see him taking too much of Tavita Totola. And also, with Totola, his minutes, I think, will go up this year. So I did change Taumalolo to Totola there for a bit. Then the Cohen Hess news came, and unfortunate stuff for Cohen Hess, but he is going to miss the entire season for the Cowboys with an ACL injury. He was probably, their biggest minutes worry off the bench in that front row spot. Now, I think it bodes well for super coaches, because I'd assume Thomas McHaley will be the man to replace him on that bench, giving us a cheapie in the front row. But I think it just means Taumalolo's minutes have to go up. If we look at Taumalolo here, I've got a few stats of him. He only averaged 49 minutes per game in 2023. I think that has to go up. I think it's got to go to mid-50s again, 55 minutes, which is what he averaged in 2022. I don't think they had the luxury of playing too many others, having lost Cohen Hess now to injury, and Luciano Leilua, who reports were they were playing him as a bit of a middle this year before he just departed to the Dragons. I think Taumalolo, especially under the scrutiny and off the back of a sort of injury and down year of 2023, I think he has to come out and show that he is that dominant, and he's still one of the best players in the NRL, because I do wholeheartedly believe that. As I said, I was a bit disappointed in his trial performance, but I'm going to back him in. So he is currently one of my front rowers, and the other man that I was talking about that I did replace him for a bit there has found his way back into the team. Tavita Totola is now partnering Taumalolo as my two run-on front rowers in my SuperCoach team. All the reasons I said before about Totola, big year for him. I think his minutes are going to go up. I think he's just got to prove to be that enforcer for that Rabbitohs team. I know they've signed Sean Keppie. I can't see Sean Keppie playing more minutes than Totola. I think Totola is their future. And, he's another player who was sort of off the back of a bit of a injury-affected year for the Rabbitohs last year. He always seemed to have some sort of niggling injury going on with him. And if you look at his minutes of 2023, he averaged 44 minutes per game at a PPM of 0.97. For those of you who don't know what the PPM is, PPM stands for points per minute. So as a front rower, you sort of want that to be around 1, or a middle forward in general. Obviously, the higher the better. If you're playing 40 minutes and you've got a 1 PPM, you're scoring 40 points. But I'd assume, as I said, I think Totola bumps that up. I think he's in for a big year for the Rabbitohs. I think he could be looking at around that 50-minute mark for the Rabbitohs. Maybe a little bit less, but regardless, it could be 5-6 minutes worth of minutes, which, at almost a point per minute is 5-6 points increased on his average, which it's really good early doors. The front row position is another really tough one this year. You can pay up for your premiums. You're paying Haas, your Tino Fasil, Mala Aoi, or Adam Fanua-Blake if you think he's going to replicate what he did again, or what he did for the Warriors last year. You can pay up for them, but I don't see too much value in doing that. I wouldn't hate owning one of those just outright. Lock it in, don't have to worry about it. But again, with the money and the structure of your team, it's difficult to do that. And I think most teams that I've seen floating about aren't able to sort of lock in those guns, and they're sort of joining me in this sort of mid-range front row forward option. So that's it. Yeah, my two front rowers, Jason Tamalolo, Tavita Tola. I think they're locked in. Well, Tavita is about to get locked out for Vegas in a couple of days. So if I get cold feet on Tamalolo, I can swap him. But Tavita, he's pretty locked in now. And off the bench, not too much needs to be said here. Sam Hughes, Tom McHaley. Starting with Sam Hughes, he's probably the lock of the entire season. Sam Hughes in a dire front row position at near bottom dollar, 238K, 238,000. Yeah, what is there to say? The Bulldogs are struggling in their forward pack for depth, especially in their middle department. Sam Hughes came out in the trials, looked like a gun. Gus Gould has been raving about him all pre-season, which we know last year the talk of the town was Jacob Preston, and what he did for the Bulldogs and from a SuperCoach perspective was incredible. Sam Hughes very well could be in a similar vein to that this year. So I think he has to be a lock at his price point and in this tough position. And another man that I already mentioned, Tom McHaley. With the Cohen Hess injury, I'd expect McHaley to get that bench spot. He looked really good in the trials. He still has a few deficiencies in his game, but at his price point, also at that 238,000 mark, he can only go up. So I think locking them in just for a bit of cash generation, it has to be the go. And hopefully Tamalolo and Totola can stay fit and bust out some good scores for me that I don't really need to play Hughes or McHaley all too often. Moving on to the second row forwards, Hylam Lukey has made his way into my team. I just think at his price point, and now with Leilua exiting the club, even Cohen Hess to a degree can play second row, and with him missing the season, it's less pressure on Lukey. You'd expect an 80-minute role, at least 70 in my opinion. And at 471,000, I think it's a steal for Hylam Lukey. I did go on and have a look at a bit of his scores over the past few seasons. He's played 5 games over the past 3 years where he's played more than 65 minutes. And across those 3 games, he's averaged 76.4. That is ridiculous. Priced at around a 46, 47 average. That's obviously that's almost 20 points of value. And Hylam Lukey's a freak. He's a genetic freak. I have no doubt he could almost average that. Like, maybe he's not averaging 76 for a season. He very much has the ability to. But if he's averaging high 60s, 70, that's ridiculous. That's a keeper for your season. You're getting him at 471,000. I don't know what else there is to say about that, really. He's almost a lock. So Hylam Lukey has made his way into my side. Sean Lane, another one that essentially should feature in every SuperCoach side this season. 446,000. We know what Sean Lane can do. It wasn't 2 years ago that he was an absolute lock for that Parramatta side, playing 80 minutes, scoring ridiculous scores. Had a very injury-affected year last year. I'm tipping him to maybe not get back to his previous years, but he has to make money. Like, there's no I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. He can't go worse. He just cannot go worse. It's almost impossible for him to go worse. He can't lose value on his current price tag, is what I was sort of trying to get at there. And I think he can, if he's not a keeper, he can certainly plod along and get us some pretty darn good scores. I'd assume a few big scores will be in there. I think the Eels are in for a good year, running off Dylan Brown, who I think has a lot to prove. I think Sean Lane will be a lock in a lot of sides, so he's almost a no-brainer there. And, of course, the final player pairing these guys up is Brendan Piakura. We know he's sort of locked in for maybe not 80, but a big minute role at the Broncos now with the departure of Kurt Capewell. He's been named and essentially been given the all clear for this Vegas game. And the Broncos' start to the season is really difficult. So maybe there's not as many attacking stats, but Piakura he's another freak. Like another one that I pointed out in the trials, the way he runs his lines, the way he hits holes, it's amazing. Like it's second to none. He is going to score a lot of tries in a Broncos side that we know has that attack. I think Piakura, another one that should almost be a lock in every side. He might not have that base that some of these other second row forwards have, but I think the attacking upside of him is too good to ignore, and I think he will get a lot of attacking and evading stats. So Brendan Piakura, he's my third second rower. My bench second rowers, I have Morgan Smithies from the Canberra Raiders, the Englishman that they've brought across, priced at $345,000. He's going to be a base stat merchant. There's a little bit of risk in there. We know the Raiders forward pack is absolutely stacked, and we know Ricky sort of likes to play around with that, but in saying that, Ricky loves his Englishmen. He loves his Pommies. I think Morgan Smithies is going to be the perfect sort of guy for them. With Corey Horsburgh out for the first few rounds, I'd expect Morgan Smithies to get that lock spot. Even if he doesn't, I'd expect big minutes off the bench, and he's not priced awfully at all. Like, he's got to make a bit of cash at least, but there's every chance he sort of plays himself into that 13 jersey, and he holds that, and Corey is used either as a prop or off the bench. So pretty much locked into my side, Morgan Smithies. Bit of question marks, but I think the positives vastly outweigh the negatives on him. Ben Trbojevic for the Manly Sea Eagles is also in my second row. Of course, available at centre wing as well. He's got that dual position availability, but I've got him in my second row at the moment. You'll get to see a bit later, but in my centre wing, I do have another DP player, dual position player there. So there's a bit of opportunity to swap them. But Ben Trbojevic, he's been a feature in every SuperCoach side for 4 years now almost. He just sort of always sneaks his way in there at $277,000, and being named at run on second row for the Manly Sea Eagles for the Vegas game. You can't go wrong. He does find an injury here and there, but the way I pick my side is I don't want to try and focus on injuries. You don't want to wish that upon any player, and they're just unlucky. Some players might be more prone to it, but honestly, I'm going to pick my side expecting them to be healthy, because that's what the NRL teams do too. If you're a coach, you're picking your side on the best, on their form, on everything, and you're going to sit there and be like, they're not going to get injured. And if they do, you deal with that later. That's how I'm sort of going with Ben Trbojevic here. I think he looked incredible in the trials, and at that price point, $277K, he's got a lot of cash generation in him. He's not locked in for that second row spot, I guess. We have, obviously, Josh Schuster, who is missing the Vegas games, who definitely could take that position, but I do sort of doubt that. Another one is Corey Waddell on the bench, but Ben Trbojevic, young, he's been named there. I'm backing him in. I think he also could be a bit of a lock for every team. There's a bit of risk, but again, positives vastly outweigh the negatives on him. And the other one there is Kane Bradley. This one is definitely subject to change. We don't exactly know what the Storm are going to do with their forward pack. Kane Bradley was getting the run on second row for them in the trials. Of course, he's played might have been 1 or 2 games for the Cowboys back in the day as a winger. Gigantic player, really, really tall. Making that transition into the second row now. You'd expect Sean Bloor would take that spot eventually, but he's only come over there late in their preseason. He was playing off their bench for them in the trials. Kane Bradley seemed to be favoured, at least for now. And at $238,000, I don't think there's too much negatives in picking him. Perhaps he loses that spot. Perhaps he doesn't play too many minutes and he becomes a bit of an AE nightmare. And at that price point, he's hard to move on. That is a possibility. It's a realization that we, might be having. But I'm going to risk that and deal with that if it happens. I think, just at his price point, I think the positives of his potential cash generation, I think they outweigh that, and I'm going to give that a go. So that is my second row forwards. I will also mention at the moment, Morgan Smithies is also one of my playing reserves for those who are not watching. For those who are, you can see that right there. So moving on to the halfbacks. We've gone the big guns. I have toyed around a bit and, potential of Sean Johnson. I really like the Warriors opening draw. I really like how the Warriors are looking in general. And I'm a Warriors fan, so there's a bit of Warriors bias there. But I think he can't go past Nicho Hynes and Nathan Cleary. The Sharks have a really good opening draw as well. Nicho is the most expensive player in the game at $970,000. But with the Sharkies draw and what we know Nicho can do, he's backed it up year on year so far in his NRL career. I don't think it's going to be hard not to have him. He's got the ceiling. Yeah, he's just a lock in my side at the moment. Nathan Cleary was the one that I was looking to, maybe play around with, free up a bit of cash, go Sean Johnson, maybe even Mitch Moses, but no. Let's save a trade down the line. Let's go the two best and let's just run them. Cleary, we've only got to see him once this preseason going out for the World Club Challenge where he ran for 200 plus meters, 36 carries, ridiculous stuff. I don't expect him to do that, week in, week out in the NRL, but it is still very impressive stuff, and I think he's in for a big year. The one thing he hasn't ticked off in his NRL career is win a Dally M medal. I think he goes out to do that. He's still my pick for the best player in the NRL, and he could go down as the best, in history if he can tick off a Dally M medal or two. So I think he's definitely got that in the back of his mind. And, the Panthers, they do also have a bit of a tough draw, but Nathan Cleary is just a superstar. He defies draws. So let's save some trades. Let's lock them in and just forget about them. If they get injured, well, it's pretty easy to downgrade. They are, I think, the two most expensive players in the game in SuperCoach. So not too much more to say about them. So we'll move on to my 5/8s, where it's a bit different. I have Cameron Munster as my run-on 5/8. Now, I'd mentioned earlier about the Storm's really difficult start to the season, which is true. I think Cameron Munster sort of defies draws. I think he gets up for those big games. He's being slept on a lot, maybe because his ceiling hasn't been there. He's always averaged really, really well, but doesn't go 100 plus all that often. 2 or 3 games a season, he'll notch it up. But the only other sort of premium option, you can go Cody Walker, but I'm a bit hesitant to do that. The only other premium option is Dill Brown, which, in all honesty, I'd love to own Dill Brown. I think he is going to be the best 5/8 this year. I can't afford him, and I've played around, and I can't really get to him. And I don't mind Cameron Munster. I've just got a bit of a gut feel about him. He's a pod only. What have we got his ownership at here? Doesn't say. Give me 1 second. So Cameron Munster currently owned by only 8% of teams, while Dill Brown's at 22%. So less than 10% ownership for, one of the best players in the NRL. I'm happy to run that. I'm happy to be a bit different, and I can't see it going wrong, really. Cameron Munster's really consistent with his scores. He's spoken a lot in the preseason about being even better again this year and believing that he was a bit down on form in 2023. So, Storm do have a hard draw, and they have a pretty early bye, but it's not going to deter me from Cameron Munster, I don't think. The more I see him in my squad, the more I'm liking it. So, Cameron Munster is my run-on 5/8. And, of course, my backup, my reserve 5/8 is Ethan Strange at the moment. Also has that centre wing dual position availability. He's a no-brainer. Someone who should be a lock in every team. He might not get the 5/8 jersey. We will have to see that. He's fighting with KO Weeks, but the way he played in those trials, you'd have to expect he does get it. I thought he was pretty locked in after that last one, and with his charge getting downgraded to just a fine, so he won't miss any game time. He has to be in there. I've got him in 5/8 at the moment, just because I think there's a lot more options in the centre wing department, and I don't mind playing him, very sparingly, just on the games that Cameron Munster misses. So Ethan Strange, 238,000 there, locked into my second 5/8 spot. My centre wings, this is where a lot of changes recently happened just before recording this video, this podcast. I have Jesse Ramian, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Taylor May, and Bronson Xerri as my run-on centre wings. Now, all preseason, I have had Greg Marzhew, and he has just found his way out of my side. The reason is, as I said, with the structure, I was a bit weak in a few different areas. In the front row spot for a while there, I had just Tavita Totola or just Taumalolo, and then I had Sam Hughes as my other starting front rower. And that's just a bit scary to me. I have a gut feel about Jesse Ramian, which is why he's in this team. Very low ownership on him. I'll quickly check what he's at. So Jesse Ramian is currently at 1% ownership. I'm a big Jesse Ramian fan. I sort of managed to own him every bloody season, and I'm not complaining about it. I really like him. I think in the early rounds, base stats are going to be incredible, and I think the center wing position has just evolved so much that it's so important to your team now. They're your upside players, and if I can choose some players that have really good base as well, then I'm happy to run that. Again, talking about Nicho Hynes, we mentioned the Sharks' really good early draw. Same can be said for Jesse Ramian. They've got Warriors week 1, who I think defensively might do a number on the Sharks. But again, he just gets through a lot of work, so I can't see him scoring anything less than 30, which, you can live with from a centre winger. And I know he's got attacking upside. So Jesse Ramian, very much a gut feel player. He's been in my squad the entire time. When looking of ways to make my squad better, he left briefly, but when you've got a gut feel in SuperCoach, you really have to trust it. You really back that in. And Jesse Ramian, that's it for me. If it goes wrong, he's at a price that I can downgrade. There are some options. But if he goes well, then I'm one of the only players who have jumped on him. And I'm excited about that. So partnering him is another player who has been in my team the entire time, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Warriors bias, available in SuperCoach again. He was in my team. And then, he was always pretty decently high ownership since he was, named to be back in the NRL and since SuperCoach opened. But his performances in the trials solidified his spot in my team, but also his spot in a lot of other players' teams. He's at 37% ownership at the moment, which is just ridiculous. That is absurd numbers for a centre wing. In saying that, you can see it here on the screen, and if you can't, I'm about to read it to you. The top 5 owned centre wings, I own all of them. Of course, in a few different positions. Ben Trebojevic is 54% owned. I've got him at second row. Ethan Strange is 52% owned. I've got him at 5/8. But then we have Taylor May, 38% owned. Spoiler alert, in my side. Roger, who we're speaking of now, 37%. And Bronson Xerri at 33%. All of which are in my side. But yeah, Roger, he looks phenomenal. I think the Warriors are in for another fantastic season. It could be make or break. It could be this year or nothing for the Warriors. And I think they might have that in the back of their heads. They looked incredible in the trials, and more importantly, Roger looked just absurd. He's a genetic freak, and I'm so excited for him to be back in the NRL. And I'm even more excited for him to be back in the Warriors. I wanted a Warriors player in my side just so I could watch their games and just have that little bit of, I've got someone to even keep an eye out for. And Roger it is. So another lock in my team. Very excited for Roger. Moving on to another player I just mentioned, Taylor May is currently in my centre wing. He was out for a while there. He was the sort of player that I just downgraded Marzhew to. He was in my early sides, made way for a bit there, but he's back in. He looked incredible in the World Club Challenge, priced at $458,000. I think we know what he can do. He can improve that tenfold. He just looks like a base stat merchant. And, in a Panthers attacking team, he'll find some attacking stats. Again, hard early draw for the Panthers, but as I said, I'm looking for base early with a bit of upside, and Taylor May brings just that at a really nice price point. So, yeah, he's not a lock in my side, but he's pretty solid in there at the moment. And of course, my other run-on centre wing at the moment is Bronson Xerri. We don't know if he will make the team. He played both trials at centre, at left centre. He looked good in both as well. He's always been a bit of a freak, Bronson Xerri. It's good to see him back in the NRL. You know, you do the crime, you serve the time. He's well and truly done that, and it's cool to see him putting his hand up and coming back. So that's awesome stuff to see. Price at $345,000. It's not a bad price point at all for what we know he can achieve. If he isn't named, of course, we'll reassess and we'll do some adjusting. But for now, I like him, and I like him sort of in my starting side. I think he brings enough base, and we know the attacking upside of Bronson Xerri. So, yeah, he locks up my starting centre wingers. My reserve centre wingers, Jamin Salmon. There is my dual position that I mentioned earlier. Not quite sure what his role with the Bulldogs is. He played a lot of lock forward for them in the trials, but I really still can't see him displacing Josh Curran. Even still, he might get a decently big minute role off the bench playing at lock, and maybe even filling in a second row at stages. Who knows? Price at $317,000. I think there's a bit of potential for cash generation there, and maybe even just some solid point scoring there. You know, if he's playing in the forwards and available at centre wing, you like that because it's just solid point scoring. We've just brought in Jack Bostock. He's also at 21% ownership, so another one that's quite high up there. I should mention Jamin Salmon at 20%, so both players very high in the ownership department. Bostock I haven't been the biggest fan of SuperCoach-wise, but I do really like the Dolphins draw. And Bostock looked good in that second trial. He got through a lot of work, which is the main thing that I've been a bit concerned about with Bostock before. And, of course, we know he can score tries. He scored a try in both trials, I believe. So, yeah, I'm at $314,000. He might not be the best cash generation, but I think he can make $100K at least, and that'll be enough for me. An option to play sparingly in the opening rounds if I have to. But for now, he's in there. And James Schiller is my last centre winger at the moment. Also subject to change. The Raiders are a difficult team to get a read on. We, by the looks of it, assume Chevy Stewart isn't going to make their run on 17 come round one, which is probably a good thing. I think Chevy could deal with a bit more time in reserve grade. Schiller, I thought, looked incredible in the trials. I love the look of him at centre. Of course, they're missing Seb Chris for the first few rounds, so we don't know what it's going to look like when he comes back. Schiller could be the man to replace. Schiller might not even be named. They've got a stack of depth across the entire team. The Raiders, you know, if they wanted to play Ethan Strange in the centres and, you know, Kale Weeks at 5'8", there's an option there. You got Rapana, you got Chotrich, who is another one that I thought looked really good in the trials, and another one at a decent price point that I could go to, but who knows who gets dropped from this side. If Chotrich is named, I will probably get myself to him some way. I'm not sure how. Maybe Bostock down, or if I can afford Schiller up. Let's just, you know, let's toy around with, can I afford Schiller up at the moment? Yes, so I can bring in Chotrich right now and still have 2,800 in my bank, which is not great, but that's all right because that means I can downgrade if Chotrich is the one to make way. However, if Schiller's the one to make way when Seb Chris is back, then it's a bit more difficult to do things. So, you know, maybe we just save my team right now. Everything I said about Schiller, it's gone. Chotrich, it's in. Chotrich, but in saying that, the same stuff applies. They're stacked for depth, the Raiders. They all look bloody good. Who knows what Chris is going to do? It could have a domino effect. It could be Xavier Savage in there, who I can't really get to at the moment. But who knows? It's just sort of a placeholder. I think one of those Raiders guys will stay in the squad. And for now, I'll just keep it with Nick Chotrich because I'm a fan of Chotrich. So that wraps up the centre wingers. Moving on to the big guns, the fullbacks. As you can see on the video, Kalen Ponga is my run-on fullback and my captain leading into round one. It's almost a no-brainer. Another player, let's just have a quick look at him. Yeah, 35% owned at the fullback. If you don't do him, you're almost setting yourself behind a bit because we know he can pop off, and that's terrifying. And I like the Knights draw. I like the Knights team in general. I think KP can go back. He could go back to back and win Dally M. So I think locking him in there, it's great. The fact he's got goal kicking and we know what he can do in attack. Just lock him in and set and forget for him. In saying that, my second fullback is currently James Tedesco. There are a lot of gun fullbacks and priced a lot higher than Tedesco. You know what? Let's have a look just for, again, ownership stats as well. Actually, let's just go. What have I done here? Average. There we go. So, Scott Drinkwater averaged the second most points for fullbacks in 2023 at 83.4%. He's only owned by 8%, so he's still a bit of a pod. He's priced at 851,000, which is, the killer for me. I can't reach that. I would like to. He has been in my squad a bit throughout this preseason, Scott Drinkwater. I'm excited about him. I'm excited about the Cowboys. But right now, I've gone down to Tedesco, and I'm not upset about it at all. Tedesco, of course, we go down here. He is owned by 4% of players, so very much pod. Only averaged 69.3 in 2023. We know he's better than that. I think the Roosters are in for a big year. I love the look of Tedesco in the trials. Another player whose base is really good as well. So even if he doesn't hit the heights, he's still got to be scoring 50s, 60s consistently if he's not doing his 100-plus scores. But I think he will do 100-plus scores. Roosters have a tough draw, but I don't know. Maybe it's a gut feel again, but James Tedesco I'm pretty confident in. There are other options. Trbojevic averaged 21.6 in a year that he was seemingly on one leg, owned by 19% of players. Reece Walsh averaged 79.6, owned by 14% of players. Clinton Gutho averaged 79, only owned by 2% of players. Probably can't replicate that form again, but I am a massive fan of Gutho. And Latrell averaged 77.3 and is owned by 8% of players. Now, as I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference because I can't afford any of them. But I have question marks on every single one of them, which I don't have for Tedesco, which is a weird thing. It really is. But, Reece Walsh, really hard draw, really low base. Can he replicate the same form? Maybe he can. He can only get better, Reece Walsh. But, at that price point, can he do it in the hard draw? Maybe he drops price. I don't know. Tom Trbojevic, another one I would love to own because I am big on Manly. I'm big on him. But there's the injury concerns. I know I said earlier I don't like to think of injuries, but Tom Trbojevic is sort of a player it's hard not to. So, there's that. Scott Drinkwater, another one with low base. Can he replicate it? I'm sure he can, but there's a little bit of question marks. Tedesco, I don't know if there's question marks. I don't think he can be worse than last year. I think Tedesco's that premium of a player, that good of a player that last year could be his worst year, like for the rest of his career. I just think maybe he's on the back end, sure. But I think that is his back end last year. And he still averaged almost 70. I really like his base. I really like his work rate. I really like his tackle busting. And I really like the Roosters this year. I think he can bob up on the back of their forward pack and the back of Brandon Smith through the middle. And I'm excited about him. So he is currently my fullback, and I'm all for it, to be honest. So that one, that wraps us up for the SuperCoach team reveal. I didn't go through and do previews for every club. I was planning on it, but at the same time, we're running short on time. I created the podcast pretty late. There are a multitude of incredible content creators out there on the market. Notably Beers and Break-Evens with Rugby League Guru and SC Playbook, Tim Williams. Probably the best out there. I love them. I engage a lot with Aman, Talks NRL SuperCoach. If you're a lot more on the stats side and you want to read into that, Aman does some incredible work. I really highly suggest you guys go and check out Aman Talks NRL SuperCoach. Those sort of previews are the stuff that I engage with, but there's a plenitude out there. You've got the SuperCoach Experience out there. You've got SuperCoach Guns. You've got SuperCoach Whisperer, if you're into that. There's a lot of content creators out there which you can engage with, especially for those team previews and just SuperCoach position previews. we're running short on time, so I thought I just wanted to get out here and give my thoughts on, the players that stick out to me that are in my side. And of course, SuperCoach content will be coming a lot more frequently. I'm going to make it a lot more of a weekly thing. When season starts, I'm going to have, fingers crossed, a permanent guest where we talk SuperCoach and we talk everything that's sort of happening. But for now, that'll wrap us up. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I hope you guys that watched on YouTube enjoyed this. Obviously, I haven't looked at the camera too much. There's a bit more to look at, but looking at you guys now, and I really respect you guys for coming in, checking it out, and all yous listening on the audio podcast. Of course, love you guys too. Definitely come check out the video if you want. If you want to engage a bit more with me, just send me knocking about. Here I am, and you can see the SuperCoach aspect on your screen if you're actually interested in that. But yeah, thank you guys for engaging. A lot more to come. I'm really excited about where this podcast is headed. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next podcast.